Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Today's session will be on black holes. So first, we'll briefly discuss what black holes are. Then we'll discuss what's it like to be around a black hole, and then we'll discuss some basic properties of non-rotating black holes and some interesting concepts like time travel, infinite, practically infinite energy, or anything related to black holes. So we'll start right now. Alright. So the topic for today is black holes. Black holes are one of the most beautiful and destructive phenomena in nature. So what is a black hole? A black hole is basically a region in space time that has infinite density and infinite mass. So it's just a lot of mass concentrated in a very small volume. It is formed after the death of a huge star. So when a huge star dies, its core collapses to form a black hole. We'll discuss more about that in the coming time. But first, just let's visualize about what a black hole is and what kind of a nature is it around a black hole. So a black hole is a region of gravity so strong that light is the fastest thing in the universe and it cannot even escape the black hole. So a black hole is so strong that light cannot even escape it. So the gravity is so strong due to one simple reason. The one simple reason is that there is a lot of mass packed in a very small volume. So if you're familiar with the force of gravity formula, so if the size is very small, the object exerts a high gravitational force around it. So let's say to give you an idea about how closely packed the object is, let's visualize the following scenario. Say that the Earth is about to turn to a black hole. It might not happen. It won't happen in any case, in any scenario. Earth just lacks the gravitational force to do that. But let's say for practical visualization purposes, Earth is about to turn to a black hole. So if Earth would turn into a black hole, all of the Earth's mass, the whole planet, would be crushed to a size of a peanut. So the whole planet would be crushed to about a volume of a peanut. So that's how strong the density inside the black hole is. So that's why black hole are one of the most intriguing phenomena in nature. Scientists are yet to fully understand what lies at the center of the black hole, and many other characteristics are not fully discovered and researched as yet. So we don't have to worry about Earth right now because Earth just lacks the mass. So there are many types of black holes. Like there are stellar mass black holes that are of mass around 5 times to 10 times to 100 times the mass of the sun. Then there are intermediate mass black holes which have masses from ranging to 100 times the mass of the sun to a million times the mass of the sun. And then there are supermassive black holes. Supermassive black holes have masses more than 1 million suns put together. So supermassive black holes have a particular characteristic. Every galaxy, every huge galaxy has a supermassive black hole at its center. Ours, the Milky Way, has the supermassive black hole Sagittarius A at its center, which has the mass of about 4 million suns, if I remember correctly. So every huge galaxy has a supermassive black hole at its center. There are many small other black holes lying around in the galaxy. There are huge estimates to about how many black holes are there in the universe. But the every center. All right. So we were discussing black holes. All right. So a black hole is, as I discussed, any region in space-time which has infinite mass and infinite density. It is formed after the collapse of a huge star. So we'll discuss it further in a few seconds, like how a black hole is formed. So uh, when a huge star dies, its core collapses under the force of gravity and it is crushed to a very small volume, and that very small volume forms the black hole. So we discussed that if Earth was to ever form a black hole, it would be crushed to a size of the peanut, a peanut. So if the whole planet was to form a black hole, it would be just concentrated in the size of a peanut. So that's how high the density is in a black hole. So then we discussed various type of black holes like stellar mass black holes with masses ranging from 5 to 100 times the mass of the sun. Then intermediate mass black holes with masses from 100 to a million times the mass of the sun. And then we discussed supermassive black holes, which were black holes that have masses higher than a million suns put together. So we discussed that every huge galaxy has a supermassive black hole at its center. Our own Milky Way galaxy has the Sagittarius A black hole. So this is what we discussed until now. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. We'll continue. So we'll discuss now how are black holes formed. So black holes are formed. I'll try to explain this in an easy way. It's a little bit sciencey. So black holes are formed at the death of a star. So I'll just take a moment to share my screen. Share screen. Yeah, is the screen visible? Oh, all right. Okay. So, I was discussing how black holes are formed. So, all right. So, this is the diagram of a star. So, the dark yellow portion in the center is the core of the star, and the outer yellower circle, lighter yellow circle, is the surface of the star. So, in the core of the stars, reactions are taking place. So, those reactions are called as nuclear fusion. Right. So they're not something that we can yet do on Earth, but they release a tremendous amount of energy. So small hydrogen atoms get combined into larger helium atoms. This reaction emits a lot of energy. So that energy is used to balance the gravitational force. So what gravitational force are we talking about? You see, the star has a lot of mass. We see the sun every day. We've heard about the sun. So a sun has a huge mass. So it's collapsing under its own gravitational force. If there is no pressure from the inside, the sun would collapse into just a small point, like a black hole. So we have the force of nuclear fusion balancing. It's like an equilibrium. It's called as hydrostatic equilibrium. So the inner force of the core balances the outer force of gravity. So the push and the pull balance, and the star lives practically forever. Stars have huge lifetimes. The lifetime of a star can be from a million years to a billion years, many billion years actually. Our sun has a lifetime of about 8 billion years, I think, and it's halfway there. So stars have huge lifetime. So it stays in this state forever, practically forever, until the hydrogen fuel starts to run out. All right. So there's a limited concentration of hydrogen in the star. So when the hydrogen fuel would run out, the star should collapse. But that does not happen. The helium that was formed starts to combine just like the hydrogen into higher atoms. So hydrogen is the smallest atom in our universe. Then it forms helium, and helium forms carbon. So at this point, if the star is like about the mass of our sun or smaller, it would just emit all of its surface outside, and then it would just form a small white dwarf. So that would be the end of the star. That's how our sun will die. It will swell up to a huge size after the helium stool starts to run out. It would practically consume Earth. That's how huge the sun would be. And then it would emit all of its mass of surface, and it would form a nebula. A nebula is a birthplace of a star. So it's a really interesting phenomena that a star dies in order to form new stars. So the sun will form a nebula, and in that nebula, small baby stars will start to form. Nebulas are an interesting discussion. We'll discuss them further in coming webinars. Uh, yeah, so we strayed off track. All right. So the death of a star, right? So stars, which are huge, like they're much more massive than the sun, they die in a brilliant way, a very interesting, intriguing way. All right. So when the carbon is formed after helium, most normal stars don't have enough pressure to form higher elements. But if a star is huge enough, it will start to form higher elements. Like the carbon will start to form oxygen and higher elements, and so on and so on. If you're familiar with the periodic table, you'll know that it increases with the mass of the element. So higher elements are start to form and heavier elements form until iron is reached. So the case with iron is that iron is like nuclear ash. So iron cannot combine to form another atom, and it won't release any energy. So at the point when iron is formed, the outwards force of the nuclear fusion stops. So for a moment, try to visualize what happens. There's just inward force of gravity. So the surface of the star rushes forward at the speed close to the speed of light. So it just happens in a blink of an eye. So the star rushes, its surface rushes close to the core of the star, and then bam, there's an explosion. So that explosion is called as a supernova. A supernova explosion is at the death of a huge star, as we discussed. After that supernova, a black hole is formed. So the supernova is really, really powerful. Like it's so bright that it can outshine entire galaxies. That's how much energy is released in a supernova. And after that, the remnant of the star forms a black hole. So it would be a little difficult to visualize for the first time. So we'll just journey through a black hole. Just give me a second. We'll use an interesting description to look how what lies near a black hole. I'll just share my screen. The screen is visible, I think. Just let me check. Yeah, so I think the screen is visible. Just let me make it full screen. All right, so this is basically a video clip of what is the nature of what surroundings like near a black hole. So we'll just go through the simulation once. So as you can see, we are moving closer to the black hole. It's a static photo, like there's not much happening around, but that's not the case in a real black hole. So as you move closer to the black hole, the concentration of matter increases. All right, so there's more matter as you get closer to the black hole. Just let me pause the video at a good time. Yeah, I think the video is paused. So as you can see at the center, there's a lot of light. But as we know, black holes are invisible. So that light is actually from the matter that is rushing into the black hole, and it's just emitting heat and light due to friction. So near a black hole, you can see that there's a lot of matter. So there's a point of no return. I'll have to share a photo of a black hole for that. Just a second. Any photo would work, I think. Yeah. So if you can see this photo, you'll see that there's a boundary that is completely black. You can't see past it. That boundary is called as the event horizon. So event horizon is the point of no return. If you cross the event horizon, your history, like you'd never come back. Because to cross the event horizon, to escape the event horizon, you need to have a speed faster than the speed of light, and that's not possible because light is the fastest thing in our universe. So to cross the event horizon, you need speed faster than the speed of light, so it's not possible. And thus it is a point of no return, so you just get sucked into the black hole if you cross that. And near a black hole, it's no picnic because there's a lot of star and very hot matter. The temperature can reach about 1,000,000 degrees Celsius, and it's just rushing into the black hole. Right, so it's no picnic near a black hole, but if you'd like, we will journey sometime in another webinar virtually. So that's the scene near a black hole. So yeah, just a second. Where were we? All right, so we discussed how black holes are formed. There's a point that I'd like to clarify first. Black holes aren't actually black. They're just invisible. Black is like a color, but black holes are invisible. You'll you'll see through a black hole. Right, so if there's a black hole, you just see a black boundary, an invisible boundary, and then you'll see stars. Right, so black holes aren't actually black, they just emit no light. And the second point is black holes aren't actually holes. So a hole is like you'll visualize a small hole in a paper in the plane of a paper. So if I take a paper and I'd say that this paper is 2D, two-dimensional. So if you visualize it on this, there's a hole would be formed. So that would be a circle. But we live in a universe where we have three dimensions, or everything is 3D near you. So what is a circle in a 3D form? Right, try to visualize a circle in a 3D form. So it's a sphere. So a black hole is actually a sphere. It's not a hole like a hole in the material of the universe. That's not the case. A black hole is actually a sphere which is completely black, not black, invisible. It emits no light. So how do we know if there's a black hole? If they are invisible, then how can we know if there's a black hole? How do we know there's one at the center of our galaxy? How have hundreds of them been discovered? So we know there are black holes because of the activity around a black hole. All right, a black hole is not like static. So if a star comes near a black hole, it starts to get sucked into the black hole. So we don't monitor the black hole actually because they're not visible. Only a photo of the black hole has been taken, and that is the photo where not the black hole is visible, but the outer surroundings, the red ring is visible. So we visualize, we monitor the measure movement of stars around it. So I'll share a screen that would better help you visualize that, like how stars are near a black hole. It's just basically a simulation of a star getting sucked into a black hole. Just a second. Yeah. So So yeah, I think it was the simulation. So it was widely visible that out of nothing, a star just got sucked into space, right? So that's how black holes work. That's how black holes eat. So scientific term is not eating, but we'll classify them as eating. So a black hole eats a star, all right? So you'll see the star moving just perfectly fine, and until just a particular day, it starts to deform. So the star is actually a sphere, and it just starts to deform like a comet. It opens up a tail. So that's how black holes are actually observed. You'll see over the course of the simulation that the star is completely sucked into a black hole. So that's another possible case to discover a black hole. So a day you'll see like for like on in the month of November there is a black hole, but next year, sorry, in the month of November you see a star, you name the star, and after a year or so that star is just gone. So where did the star go? And you're not actually able to find the star in the universe. So that's how, and that's another case where black holes are discovered. So that's the nature of a black hole. They eat stars, right? So we'll come back to the, we'll move on to the next topic. Just a second. All right, yeah. Yeah. So what all did we discuss right now? We discussed about the different types of black hole. We discussed what is near a black hole. We discussed about the event horizon. We discussed about how it is a point of no return. How is the density of the black hole? What happens if you go near one? So there's some things that we discussed before that I like to recall. So I told you that gravitational time dilation is an effect observed near a high gravitating mass in the first webinar. So near a black hole, due to gravitational time dilation, time slows down, as we discussed earlier. So that's a possibility to time travel, as the discussion went on. The second type of an effect near a black hole is called as spaghettification. It's actually a scientific term and not something that I'm making like the eating thing. It's actually a scientific term called as spaghettification. So if you're near a black hole, I'll just take the example of a pen. All right. So if you're near a black hole and you're getting sucked into the black hole, right? So your feet, if you're going feet first, your feet are experiencing a higher gravitational force because they're closer to the black hole. This is not observed in here on Earth because Earth has a very low gravity. All right, so your feet and your head are basically very negligible. There's a difference. All right, so if you're close to a black hole has a very high force of gravity, and there can be huge changes in just small distances. So your feet are actually getting pulled inwards at a higher force of gravity than your head. So you can imagine that you will be stretched out like a noodle. That's why the term spaghettification came into use. So if you're near a black hole, your feet will get at a force, sorry, pulled at a higher force of gravity than your head. So you'll actually be your whole atoms will be pulled apart into small strings. So that's how you get sucked into a black hole. This is the case for a stellar black hole because they have a very low, very high density, sorry, because they're small and they have a very high density. But if you go near a supermassive black hole, near a supermassive black hole, the effect of spaghettification is not that much because they have a huge radii. So it's not, you'll cross the event horizon and you'll not know it. It's that kind of a thing. So if you ever plan on going to a black hole to die, obviously, not die, we'll explore various possibilities about what could happen if you go into a black hole. All right. So if you go near a black hole, be sure to choose a supermassive one. All right. So the next thing, all right, just a second. Yeah. So what all we discussed was for the non-rotating black hole. We discussed about the non-rotating black hole because it was easier to understand. It was our first time. But now we'll move on to the reality. The reality is that there are no non-rotating black holes in the universe. The property of things in the universe is that they rotate, right? So our sun is rotating, the earth is rotating, every known object rotates. So when a rotating star dies to form a black hole, that
that rotation energy would not be lost, right? So it's something we called as angular momentum. So it remains conserved. So if the star is rotating, the black hole found will also rotate. So non-rotating black holes are actually more intriguing and difficult to comprehend. All right. So it's just basically, if you sum up in one line, uh, in simple words, the weirdest thing in our universe is more screwed up than you'd think. All right. So non-rotating black holes have actually two horizons. One is the event horizon from where you can't return, and the other is called as the ergosphere. So ergosphere is formed due to the rotation of a black hole. So when a black hole rotates about its axis, it rotates at a very high volume. Oh, sorry, very high speed. Right. So it rotates about 1,000,000 times per second. So you can imagine that how fast the black hole would be rotating, and it has a huge mass. So the resulting effect is that it curves the space around the black hole. Right. So this is a black hole, and it's rotating very fast. So the universe, this universe material that is around it, which we call space time, gets curved into a sphere known as the ergosphere. I have a visualization for just a second. I think somebody's mic is on. Just yeah, sorry for the inconvenience. Actually, a mic was on. I forgot to take the unmute permission. So we were discussing. Yeah, I had to show you a simulation. So that's the simulation of an ergosphere, which we discussed right now. So just keep in mind that it's a surface of a rotating black hole due to the curvature of space-time. It's a really difficult thing to comprehend for the first time. Just visualize it like, say that you have a huge, say, glass, something that is more malleable, say a sponge ball, a sponge ball. So if you rotate something inside a small sponge ball with the help of a, say, a string and anything at the center of the small sponge ball, the ball itself rotates, right? So a black hole is a part of a space-time, the universe material. So when the black hole will rotate, the material will rotate with it. And because the black hole has a high mass and a very, very high rotating speed, the universe rotates in a very fast volume. If you remember correctly, that I told that time travel to the past is possible if our universe was rotating. So in a rotating universe, time travel to the past would be possible. So if the black hole is rotating, there's actually a possibility for time traveling to the past, which we'll discuss at the end of the webinar. First, we have to understand what an ergosphere is. So I think I haven't shared my screen. Just a second. It's a very short simulation. Okay. Yeah, it's a very short simulation. Yeah. These I'll just try to explain. Yeah, these curved lines that you are seeing, the grid-like structure is the fabric of space-time. So it's moving inwards. That's a complex thing to understand. Just keep in mind that it's the fabric of the universe. So that purple thing is actually the ergosphere. That's the surface of the universe rotating with the black hole. So yeah, keep this in mind while visualizing. The inside surface that you see, the black one is the event horizon, and the outside purple one is the ergosphere. Yeah, this picture actually gives us a very good understanding of what an ergosphere and an event horizon is. So if you'll see that where I've paused the video, there are actually two surfaces. One of them is the black hole's event horizon, the point of no return, and the other is the ergosphere. A special property about the ergosphere is that the space is rotating so fast that you can't even like just stay stationary for a moment. If you are in the ergosphere, you'll be rotating like a whirlpool something. So it's just basically like, I'll try to use an analogy. A non-rotating black hole is something like just a small pit. You just fall into it and then you're history. But afterwards, the ergosphere is something like a whirlpool. So you might have seen a whirlpool in an ocean or something. So the whirlpool is it's just rotating like a spinning machine. So if you're in the whirlpool, you'll have no option but to rotate. So this concept actually gives us an idea about how we can extract energy from a black hole. So something we can use when we build further rockets, right? I'll just, yeah, when we build space rockets. So for space rockets, we actually need a very high speed because everything is very far, far away from us in the universe. Even the nearest star to us is approximately 5 light years away. So space is very, very vast. So we need a huge amount of, very high amount, very high speed to travel in the universe. That's actually something we'll discuss in one of the coming webinars about how the space is, you know, pictured and how it is actually in reality. So if I try to give you a brief understanding, like you're just one of the 7 billion people on this planet. Our planet is one of the 9 planets in the solar system. Our solar system is based at the center. There's a sun, which is a star. So sun is a star in one of many millions, hundreds of millions of stars in just our own galaxy. So there are hundreds of millions of stars, and one of them is sun. And our galaxy, Milky Way, is one of trillions of galaxies in the universe. So but just a very, very, very small point in the universe. So we'll discuss about how large the universe is and what time scales and speed scales in the coming webinars. All right. So continuing with the black hole. All right. So non-rotating black hole is like an ergosphere. We discussed that. All right. So the cheat code, I'll call the energy absorption. So we have to extract energy from a black hole. All right. So we take a rocket and we take a huge mass with us, say an asteroid. So we hook up the rocket with an asteroid and we dive into the ergosphere. Right. So in the ergosphere, we're actually rotating and rotating. Right. I think the screen is on. Stop share. Yeah. So in the ergosphere, we're rotating and rotating like a whirlpool, as I said earlier. So if you go into the whirlpool with the a rocket and an asteroid and you start rotating, so the black hole gives you energy and increases your speed. You go with the flow and you start to rotate faster and faster and faster. But to escape the black hole, you'll have to give something in return. So you drop the asteroid. In scientific terms, you lose some mass, and then the black hole shoots you out of the ergosphere. So if you lose some mass, the black hole consumes that mass. Actually, the mass goes into the black hole, and due to the loss in mass, you start to shoot away from the black hole. So you go into the black hole with a very small speed, and you come out of it at the speed of at speeds close to the speed of light. That's how much energy is there in the black hole. But that's not something that I'm interested in actually. So the black hole would power my spaceship for just a small burst. That's not helpful to me at all. So what I'll do is I have another amount I'm saying another process by which we can extract energy from a black hole, right? And that process is a huge amount, a huge beneficiary if we ever find a black hole, right? So you take a black hole and you cover it with a lot of mirrors. So a black hole is actually very small. The sun, as I discussed earlier, it has a huge density, so it will be very small in size. So it won't be that difficult if you take a smaller black hole. All right. So you take a black hole and you cover it with a lot of mirrors. I'll use my screen. It helps. It just helps. Really helps in the visualization. Just a second. Share screen. Yeah, yeah, this is something that I was talking to you about before, right? So the inside that the glass is there's a black hole. So you take a black hole and you cover it with a lot of mirrors, right? And then you open one of the mirrors and then you shoot a light beam inside it and then you close the mirror, right? So what would happen to that light beam? It would start to hit mirrors and reflect it. So it's a really huge light beam and it would start to reflect. Like I'll just try to draw here, right? So the light beam, just a second. Yeah, let's use white for the light beam. All right. So you say that this is the light beam that is going here. Then it would hit this surface of the mirror and then it would like reflect here and then it would hit this surface. As you can see that in every path, it would go through the ergosphere. The ergosphere would accelerate, not accelerate light, it would impart more energy to this beam of light. So it would be more energetic every time it passes the ergosphere. So if you would see that it hits this mirror and then it will go to the front and then it will this. So a small amount of light would actually be lost to the event horizon, but that would be really small. The larger part of the light would just reflect and reflect and reflect and pass to the ergosphere a lot of times. So that actually that electromagnetic radiation or light would be powered through a lot of energy. So we can open small windows in that mirror structure that we formed, and through the small windows we can actually extract that energy. That energy would be so huge that it can power civilizations for trillions of years. To give you a brief idea of that energy, imagine our own galaxy. Our own galaxy has about 200 million stars, right? So the amount of energy that those 200 million stars would emit in 1 billion years would be the amount of energy that would be able to extract out of one black hole. So one black hole would power us with energy of a 200 million stars, which they would emit in 1 billion years. So that's a huge amount of energy, and that would be very beneficial for us in the future. So we are in the middle of an energy crisis in the world. Our fossil fuels and energy sources have started to extinguish. So that would be a very huge benefit for us if we could power our civilization through a black hole. So that's the energy we can extract from a black hole. But for visualization purposes and for just some fun, let's visualize that we don't open the windows, right? So the light is trapped inside the black hole. So it will just keep on reflecting and reflecting and reflecting until the glass shatters. When the glass shatters, there will be a huge explosion. Let's name it the black hole bomb. So it will be sorry, it will be a huge explosion that it will outshine entire galaxies. So we discussed about the supernova earlier. A supernova is a very huge explosion after the death of a star, and it can outshine many galaxies. A black hole explosion, a black hole bomb explosion would be comparable to that. It will outshine entire galaxies. So you can imagine that this galaxy is so huge and so many stars emitting light at the same time. This explosion would be so powerful that it can outshine entire galaxies at a time. So this much amount of energy would be released. It would make look nuclear weapons, firecrackers, and matchsticks. A more apt version would be the spark that the earlier humans used to throw from the rocks to light the wood. That's how powerful that explosion would be, right? So this is something that I have named the black hole bomb. So this is the one of the practical purposes of the black hole. I'll just stop sharing. Mm, yeah, coming back to the topic. So we've discussed about the black hole bomb, the infinite source of energy, the universal cheat code with mirrors. Right, so yeah, that brings us to the last topic of our webinar. So that's time travel. I promised you time travel in the first webinar, but save something for me for this webinar. Right, so a discussion about black holes was necessary to understand. So as we discussed, when black holes are moving, they take the space with them, and then the space moves with them. So the point, it has been mathematically proven that if you dive inside the ergosphere at a particular angle, you could actually travel to the past. So for that, you need an understanding of time loops, right? So for time loops, I'll need a string. All right, just a second. So yeah, imagine this as a string, right? So this is a string, and I curl and give this is the space-time string. So the bottom of the string is your past, this is your present, and the top is your future. All right, so this is the fabric of space-time. Due to the black hole, the space-time around is curved, so that string starts to form a circle. Right? So it forms a circle. Yeah. Now this is a circle. So if I start at your past, I move back to the present and then back to the future. And then due to that, a time loop is formed. So I would be scientifically, in fact, would be able to go to the past. The note here is that you can actually go to the past when the object was actually there. So if the black hole is there, the maximum you can go into the past would be the age of the black hole. But the advantage here is that black holes are actually very they live huge lives, right? So if the black hole is say a billion years old, so it would be actually able to travel a billion years into the past. You can visit dinosaurs and do stuff if you're able to come back from the black hole. So it would be scientifically possible to travel to the past. So this is something called as a time loop. If the universe rotates around a black hole, it takes the time around it and a time loop is formed. So as I discussed, you're living in the present, you can go to the future, and in turn you can even go back to the past. So that's something it's a possibility of time travel, but for that you'll need a black hole, a, a very precise mathematical calculations. And if you're not a fan of maths, I won't solve Einstein's equations for that, right? So I've explained to you what a time loop is, and this is all I have for this webinar. I'll just take a brief amount of time for you to show you a blogging website that I have made. So the blogging website is called as Astro Weekly. So there I post regular articles on astronomy and space stuff, like the black hole one you just heard. So that's not actually something I posted. I posted it way back, and this is the new article. So new articles are posted on a regular basis. You can sign up to the blogging website, and then you can have access to the member only pages. All right. So I'll just drop the link of the website in the chat. Just a second. Yeah, I'll just take a moment to share my screen and just let you know about the website. So it's just a basically community named as Astro Weekly. I post various articles there on space stuff. So if you are willing to join, you can sign up as a member. It's just really easy. It takes a matter of seconds. So you can sign up to the blogging website. I have shared my screen for the website. Just a second. Yeah. This is the website. You can access everything from here, the webinar recordings in the video section as well. And then there are blogging, there are blogs in the blog section as well. So you can actually there are a lot of articles on top 7 hypothetical objects, the need for speed and stuff. So there are a lot of articles which you can access. So you just basically have to sign up as a member from the top right corner. Just sign it says log out for me. It would say sign up for you. Just log in as a member, and it would be really helpful for me and interesting for you to read the articles as well. So I'll end the webinar here. Thank you for joining in. And if you have any other doubts or any other things, you can ask me. I'll stay here for a while. You can ask any other doubts, and I'll check the chat too. Thank you for joining in. You can leave right now if you don't have any doubts or you don't want to participate in further discussion. Just a second, I'll just check the chat. Does matter come to their original state after entering the black hole? So that's something called as the black hole paradox. So it's actually called as the information paradox, and it was put forward by Stephen Hawking. So the information paradox is something that if you go into the black hole, you're actually the part of a black hole. You just get sucked into the black hole, and you're part of the singularity at the center. So initially, you are, say, you're Harsh, and you have a height, you have a weight, you have a color, you have a mass, you have many other things. All right. So that is information about Harsh. He has a brain, he has things, he has knowledge. So that information is lost once you go inside a black hole. A black hole is only characterized by its mass and its charge and its mass and its spin. So you can classify the black hole by its mass, how heavy it is, and if it's spinning and if it's not spinning, if it's spinning at what speed. So there are basically just two things. So if that black hole was supposed to die sometime, and it's a really interesting phenomenon how a black hole dies. So if the black hole was supposed to die sometime, that information about Harsh would be lost. We don't know what happened to Harsh. It would just be random particles floating out of. We could never make a Harsh back out of them, right? So that information is lost. So the matter coming into the black hole does not retain the original state because because of further calculations, they say that it gets the part of it gets combined with the singularity. So that information is lost. So that is actually not the original state. Just check for other messages. Yeah, I have a question. How long do black holes live? All right. So black holes have huge, काफी ज़्यादा ages, right? So it is not practically possible to visualize those ages. They are so vast, right? So a black hole, say the mass of our sun, would live to around 10 to the power 67 years. 10 to the power 67. That's 1 and 67 zeros after it. It's very difficult to grasp, and our human lifetimes are about 80 to 100 years if you're lucky enough. So the black hole lives to around 10 to the power 67 years. That would be the basically our end of the universe. So right, the stars would form black holes, and black holes will be all there is, and those black holes will finally die after a very large amount of time. But there are no black holes the mass of our sun. The black holes are actually very supermassive. So the highest black holes or the largest black holes in our universe would actually die after 10 to the power 100 years. Just a second. Yeah, so 10 to the power 100 years. 100 years, 10 to the power 100. That's 1 and 100 zeros after it. So that's a huge age that you can't actually grasp. All right. So I'll just check the chat for other questions. Do you have a, just a second. Do you have a book to recommend or to know more about the universe or any other source maybe? Actually, I have read a lot of books. Uh, the last book that I read was E is equal to mc square. So that book is about the equation that the Einstein invented. So the whole book is about the equation. It's actually not very boring. It's actually really interesting. That equation helps you gather a lot of knowledge about general relativity and the time dilation and stuff. There are a lot of good books out there also, like the Theory of Everything by Stephen Hawking, the Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. They're really great books to gather more knowledge about astronomy. You can always read online articles as well. There's a lot of stuff up online as well. There are many YouTube videos as well. But if you prefer reading a book, I'll suggest three reads: A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, The Theory of Everything by Stephen Hawking, and E is equal to mc square by David Bodanis. So those are actually very good books, right? So if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you, Nandika, for joining Astro Weekly. All right, so I think there are no more messages. Yeah, so I think there are no more doubts. Actually, thank you for joining in. I hope you had a great time. I hope you all learned something new today. Be sure to check out the next webinar and do sign up as a member.